are formidable.
I've waited for this moment.
Welcome to the motherfucking lady. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, now it's time for another installment of what has fast become the most popular segment here on the channel, Ring IQ Hate Mail! Wilfredo Cervantes, a big David Benavidez fan who's made at least a few appearances on the hate mail, said, I remember this channel was saying that David Benavidez was ducking David Morrell, only to end up taking the fight, and in the same line of thinking, if Benavidez is some hype job.
Isn't that the same thing Jerry Soriano said?
Yeah, these guys all shop at the same supermarket for things to say. Wilfredo continued, then in turn, isn't Canelo for losing to Mayweather, to Bivol, to Crawford?
Isn't he, what, a hype job?
All about 4 or 5 years apart, and Canelo never improved versus that style of in-and-out movers.
Well, before you compare Canelo to David for losing, who did David fight that was on the level of a Mayweather, of a Crawford, of a Bivol? Because it wasn't Zerto.
Wilfredo continued, and having another versus Lara, same had trouble once, say Lara gave the fight away in close fight versus a much smaller Khan. Khan, another mover, was winning rounds until his crystal jaw got smashed. Even the Skull fight, Canelo simply couldn't cut off the ring in a fight where Skull threw double the punches than Canelo, where Canelo landed the least punches in a little fight.
You can tell this guy really wanted to give me a piece of his mind, the way this is written.
A fight where neither deserved to win. All movers, all different times in Canelo's career, yet this channel found excuses for every loss or bad performance and hate Benavidez, not really for his fighting, but just because he made Canelo look like a coward.
So your retort seems to be to focus on Canelo. Gee, I never would have expected that from a David Benavidez fan. Let's first address what he led with, the David Morrell stuff, which I already addressed in my previous video. What he's talking about is when Samson Lukowicz said that he had a signed contract for David Benavidez to fight David Morrell, only for David Benavidez to call it fake news.
Made a video about it, made several videos about it, urging David Benavidez to fight David Morrell. And when he did, who did I pick to win, Wilfredo? Does your memory not serve you when it comes to that?
Because they always seem to leave that part out.
So what are you actually mad about? That I covered the story? That I even talked about it? That it put David in an unflattering light?
Why are you mad?
As stated, they can never actually refute the talking points I raise. All they can do is defer to Canelo Alvarez, as if that serves as some sort of retort. Are you trying to establish a double standard?
Because that would imply that both David and Canelo meet the same standard, when it's very obvious that they don't. Canelo Alvarez became an undisputed champion in the same division where David was for over a decade.
Canelo became undisputed. David didn't do that. Now, what he did do was lose his title on the scales for missing the weight, after which the smaller, older fighter comes in, unifies the entire division in just 11 months, doing all the heavy lifting.
Why are you mad?
Is it because David didn't get what he wanted? I'm sorry. Is that your understanding of how boxing works? Because, newsflash, Sugar Ray Robinson never fought Charlie Burley. Sugar Ray Leonard never fought Aaron Pryor. Floyd Mayweather never fought Amir Khan, never fought Keith Thurman.
Chocolatito didn't fight Inoue when the fight was on offer.
The point being, those fighters' accomplishments and accolades are not automatically undone because one fighter didn't get what they wanted.
And it's no different for Canelo.
You want to sit here obsessing about Canelo because that fat fuck has got a campaign at cruiserweight now?
That's exactly what it is. Wilfredo and all the other guys like him are a nervous wreck.
That David is up there at cruiserweight now, and there are only so many old sparring partners you can conjure up.
In a video about Benavidez versus Opetaia, don't you see what this guy's focusing on? Canelo.
In a video about Benavidez versus Bivol, don't you see what this guy's focusing on? Canelo.
It's all the Benavidez fans ever want to talk about, because underneath it all, they don't like David's chances against those fighters. They don't even know if he's going to fight them. So they want to talk about Canelo. Because he's older, and because he's smaller, because some people think he's in decline, and because they figure David would have a better chance against Canelo than he would against them.
That ship has sailed. What do you think you're doing by beating that dead horse?
What's that accomplishing?
You trying to establish a double standard? How could I have a high opinion of Canelo for losing to Floyd and Crawford and Bivol and have a low opinion of David?
Well, those are all pound-for-pound fighters, buddy.
How many of those has David actually shared the ring with? Your argument is tantamount to saying that Duran must be a hype job because he lost to Leonard and lost to Hearns and lost to Hagler. That's essentially what you're saying, that because Canelo lost to some really good fighters, he's not any good.
That's what it sounds like, so let David do that and see how he makes out. Let him raise the bar, step up in class, and fight somebody who's that good on that level, because he didn't do that by fighting his old sparring partner.
It doesn't fool me, and that's what you're mad about.
I saw it coming 2 years in advance.
I knew he would win. It was just a question of how. Funny how you don't mention that either. And what is this poorly written and long-winded paragraph of tears to establish what? That I'm not a fan of David?
Sugar.
Instead of obsessing about a Canelo-Alvarez fight that is never gonna happen, why don't you just tell him to go fight Jai Opetaia? Or does that bother you?
Tell me what David's good at. Tell me how many.
A lot.
What do you like
I
about
love
David?
his whole offensive arsenal. His whole offensive arsenal. I don't think nobody got
Let
an
me ask you
offensive
something. Let me
arsenal
ask
like
you
that.
something. Let me ask you something. Do you like his jab?
I like every punch.
Do you like his uppercuts?
Oh, you're talking about
Do you like his
Jai?
body
Are you
shots?
talking about Jai?
No, David.
Oh, everything.
David.
Yeah,
I'm talking about David.
Yeah, I like his game. I like his game.
This is what David has. Let me tell you what David has. Has a great fucking jab. Good uppercuts. Good body shots. Good angles. You know, have you seen those shots from the top, like Golovkin shots?
Mm-hmm.
I call them the Golovkin shots. Fight things, you know, defense, you know, aggression.
Speed.
See that he fucking turned southpaw when he finished Zurdo, so he can fight in both.
Stance.
IQ, phenomenal. That's what I'm saying. You know, how can you compare all these things? Tell me something about Opetaia. Like I said, just one thing.
I'm gonna be real
So,
with you. I
I
haven't
mean-
even seen enough of him. But what I have seen,
Me neither.
it's not
That's
enough
what I
to
watch
beat
him.
David for
I've
me.
I've been watching them and I've been seeing them because that could be a fight. My job is to see what he does and what are the things that he. The only good thing about him, I'm gonna tell you what the good thing is. He just talks a lot of shit. That's the only thing I see. You know, he's mad. Right. He's mad because he doesn't get the fights that he wants to. He's mad because he didn't fight Zurdo. He's mad because he's not. But at the end of the day, you know, something's wrong there with the management, you know, or the management not believing on him that he's not ready.
That's not why Jai Opetaia is not getting those fights. He's not getting those fights because guys are ducking him. It's really not complicated. Both CBS and Zurdo Ramirez chose to fight each other instead of fighting Jai because they viewed each other as easier opponents in dealing with him.
Your son is doing the same thing. Upon moving up in weight, he could have went after the Ring Magazine and Lineal champion. He instead chose to go after an old sparring partner.
Even if he did have 2 alphabet titles, that's what he was. A guy who David shared over 100 rounds with in sparring. I almost threw up in my own mouth hearing Jose Benavidez try to go over all these things that David is supposedly good at when he didn't do anything on Saturday that we haven't already seen, and all the same flaws are still there. Instead of taking a bladed stance, he squares up and gives his opponent both shoulders to let go of those shoe shines.
I didn't actually see anything spectacular.
Or anything new, or anything dynamic. The most that I can say about David Benavidez is that he's fast. He's fast in the pocket.
That's why I picked him to win.
Because he's fast in the pocket, but he's not fast on his feet. He doesn't have the best footwork. He doesn't have the best defense, which is why he's been knocked down more times than Jai.
This is a fucking joke.
This guy's literally been down more times than Jai Opetaia for the exact same defensive deficiencies.
Squaring up.
So when has that ever been the earmark of a dynamic fighter, a really skilled fighter, giving your opponent both shoulders?
Isn't that what they tell you not to do?
I've literally seen fights where David Benavidez crosses his feet while approaching the opponent.
Isn't that what they tell you not to do?
But these fundamental flaws are masked with opportunistic matchmaking, because that's what David Benavidez is the product of. You can at least appreciate Mill City's honesty that he hasn't seen enough of Jai Opetaia to evaluate him as a fighter. He can't tell you what his finer qualities are. But I can.
I can tell you he's not going to cross his feet while approaching his opponent.
No, he's going to stay in a bladed stance using his jab because he actually has more of a jab than David.
Out of a bladed stance, he doesn't square up like David does. And why is there so much focus on David squaring up?
Because if you get hit while you square, you're going to get knocked on your ass, like David did in the Ronald Gavril fight.
And the fact that after all this time, David is still doing that? What's Jai Opetaia's best punch?
Straight left hand or the cross. Off the jab or off the counter. I've seen him floor many an opponent with that straight left hand. I believe that he would floor David Benavidez.
That's why they're not fighting.
Jai actually has better footwork than David, and range of motion, mobility, and agility.
Because when has David Benavidez ever been light on his feet?
When has he ever been agile?
Guy fights like he's a mummy.
Stomping around the ring like a Clydesdale. The reason this fight isn't happening isn't because Jai doesn't have the IBF title anymore or because he hasn't fought the right people. It's actually because Jose knows what he's looking at. Stylistically, Jose knows Jai Opetaia's all wrong for his son.
So he's gonna downplay him. He's gonna say he ain't no good. He's gonna try to convince you Jai's a beginner.
He still needs to develop, all to convince you shouldn't want to see David fight him. Though why shouldn't he fight him? If your son was all right to fight David Morrell, who was never Ring Magazine, never lineal champion, never even a full champion, if you were all right to fight David Morrell and his 11 fights, why are you not all right to fight Jai and his 30?
Because you're fucking scared.
And that's all it really is. Over to what's supposed to be the Benavidez versus Bivol fight that I also doubt will happen as Vadim Kornilov speaks on the possibility.
He addresses David Benavidez's request for a 190-pound catchweight.
In the wake of David Benavidez's destruction of Zurdo Ramirez this past weekend, the new unified cruiserweight champion has spoken of facing the recognized light heavyweight champion of the world, Dmitry Bivol. Benavidez has stated that preliminary discussions have already taken place. Vadim, who manages Bivol, has confirmed this. There are some conversations, yes, he told me on Wednesday morning. Currently, he is in Turkey, visiting the training camp of Bivol, who faces his IBF mandatory challenger, Michael Eifert, on May 30th in Russia. Benavidez holds not only the WBA and WBO cruiserweight titles, but also the WBC light heavyweight title. According to Kornilov, from what I heard, he wants to make the fight at 175. He was okay with moving back to 175, but earlier this week, Benavidez did tell the Porter Way podcast that he would like to face Bivol, a career light heavyweight, at a 190-pound catchweight, which would then make this a cruiserweight contest, and the light heavyweight titles would not be at stake.
It's hard to imagine you're going to get all four sanctioning bodies to adhere to a fight that would feature both light heavyweight titles and two cruiserweight titles at cruiserweight?
Maybe the WBA would go for that because I've seen them do something similar, but I doubt the IBF and the WBO.
I don't know about them.
I haven't discussed it with Dmitry, the weight part, but the negotiations that have been going on, from what I was told, were at 175, stated Kornilov, who did add, we're open to discuss options as far as the weight. It had been assumed that Bivol would engage in the rubber match with Artur Beterbiev, who Bivol defeated last February in what was his last fight. But Kornilov says nothing right now is in place except for May 30th, the Eifert fight. Then I guess we'd have to talk after this fight is completed. Both fights are being discussed.
Well, I don't think people would hold it against Dmitry if he decided to go with the Benavidez fight instead of the Better Beef trilogy. I think most people would be on board for that, save Artur Beterbiev.
Of course, he's not going to like that, though. Until further notice, you have to also factor that into the equation, the possibility of a Better Beef trilogy. So what is the preference between a Benavidez fight and a Better Beef trilogy? According to Kornilov, we don't have a preference, but we do have a priority because of what's been discussed with the Saudis and His Excellency, explained Kornilov.
It's just a roundabout way of saying that they're going to do whatever Turkey LL Sheikh wants them to do, because he's the one paying for everything.
Common sense would dictate that it basically all boils down to the money, which Kornilov admits would be a very important factor. Obviously, yes. Would that be the only factor? No. But is that one of the priorities? I think that it does make a big difference. Both fights are tough fights. Benavidez is one of the best in his division. Beterbiev is still one of the best in his division. He still has not lost to anybody but Dimitri. So both of those fights are dangerous and a big risk, he continued. So taking either of those fights, there has to be a financial upside. It has to be meaningful. The plan is for one of these matchups, provided everything goes as expected later this month, to take place by the end of this year. I think the next fight will be at the very end of the year, if health-wise everything is okay, said Kornilov, who says that Bivol has recovered well from his back surgery that had sidelined him for over a year. That would be the plan.
And what is a sort of damned if you do, damned if you don't situation, because if Dimitri were to pick David over Artur, Artur would then accuse him of avoiding the trilogy. Artur's been accusing him of doing that for months.
Mark Ramsey, Artur's trainer, has accused Dimitri of aging his fighter out. It's really not Dimitri's fault that Artur Beterbiev is some years older than him.
But that is what they've been saying, and if Dimitri were to go with David instead of Artur, that's what they would continue to say, put the shoe on the other foot. If he goes with Artur instead of David, what some might say is he chose to fight the older fighter,
the inactive fighter, because Artur Beterbiev hasn't been up to much of anything since his second fight with Dimitri, and he needs to get back out there so that if he doesn't, and he doesn't come back until Dimitri's free to have the trilogy, some people are going to criticize Dimitri for it, saying he chose to fight the older fighter instead of the younger one. It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't kind of deal.
Now, anecdotally, and this is just what I think, I don't view David Benavidez as a real option for Dimitri, not at 175. I think that David is putting on and saying all the right things while the cameras are rolling, but common sense would dictate a guy doesn't go all the way up to cruiser, then cut 25 pounds to fight at light heavy,
to then weaken himself, because that's what that would do.
You see a lot of people latching on to that narrative that David will return to the light heavyweight division, where I never believed it.
And still don't. So, if the subject of Dimitri versus David is broached, I personally don't expect it to happen, which might make the Beterbiev trilogy more viable, since that wouldn't require Dimitri to move up in weight and fight at a catch weight.
That one is sitting right there.
And maybe that's the fight that Dimitri will end up having at the end of the year. They are both 1-1 with each other. After all, desire to see the trilogy has since cooled because so much time has passed. In tandem with the desire to see Dimitri fight somebody fresh, somebody new, somebody else, somebody like David.
Because he's the one's buzzing right now.
While Artur's missing in action, people are lukewarm on a trilogy. But that may be what ends up happening, after which I expect Dimitri to move up
to cruiser in the coming calendar year.
Though if Bivol versus Beterbiev 3 is what ends up happening at the very end of this year, what does David do in the interim? Who does he fight in the mean and between time? And I've maintained he may not fight again this year. The year that he fought David Lemieux, that was the only fight that he had. Then the year that he fought Alexander Vozdik, making his light heavyweight debut, that was the only fight that he had.
The Zurdo Ramirez fight at cruiser may be the only fight that he has.
Putting a Bivol showdown somewhere out there at maybe April, May, the second quarter of next year. It could happen that way.
It's not uncommon for David Benavidez to only fight once in a calendar year.
And I don't expect him to move back down to 175. Out of the question.